Good morning, guys. My name is Dr. Rob, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. This is Recovery Channel Podcast, coming live from San Antonio, Texas this morning. I just wish everybody was here with us. Good morning, Jen. How are you doing? How's Phoenix?
Good morning. Well, Phoenix, I have no idea, but Sedona is good. Lots
It's only
of
next door.
hiking and fun. I had a friend here for 4 days. It was fun. But you know what they say about company? Do you know what they say about company?
No.
Oh, we had internet stuff.
Yeah.
So they say that after a few days,
it starts
to smell like fish.
Aha. Yes, definitely. So what you been up to, Jen? Anything good?
That's funny. Just playing. Adult playground in the backyard here. Just hanging out, playing, doing some working, being with clients. All the good
Superb
stuff. Life is good. What about you?
I'm good. One of us is breaking crazy, but I don't know what it is. I hope next door I haven't dug my line up. But yeah, I think it's your end, Jen, that's breaking, because me and Eddie seem to be moving okay, and you keep freezing on the screen. But let's bear with it and see how we go. Sound good?
Okay.
All right, guys.
Sounds good.
Eddie Lashure's on the show with the cat, and he'll be right on. He got a fantastic story, a fantastic, good recovery story. So we'll be right back after this, guys. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is Recovery Channel Podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. We've also got Eddie Lashure on the show this morning. Good morning, Eddie. How are you doing?
Good morning, guys. Doing great.
And who have you got with you there?
This is Freya, our recovery kitty. And Freya and I have something in common. We both have 14 years. In her case, it's on the planet. And for me, it's return to the planet.
Yeah, literally. Awesome. Okay, let's dive straight in, Eddie. I know you got a great story. You got a great recovery story. You've got a lot of trauma back there, as we just talked about before, and such an amazing story today. But let's go back to the beginning. Tell me what kind of upbringing you had, what kind of environment you grew up in.
Well, I had a great upbringing overall. I mean, a really stable, safe environment. I grew up outside a small town in upstate New York. There wasn't violence or addiction in my house. I didn't move around a lot. My issues really started showing up when I moved away from home at the age of 18. And the social environment and where my head was at in relationship to what was happening in the country. I had a really good environment. Unlike many people, as you know, that were subjected to so much trauma growing up.
So talk to me a little bit about how things went sideways when you moved away. What was going on?
Well, I graduated from high school in 1966. And this is where you say, gee, you don't look that old, Eddie.
Next words out of our mouth. Oh, will you just beat us to it?
So anyway, 1966, I know you guys know nothing about this, but I went right into the 60s, which of course was, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There was a political environment, social-political environment. It was very intense. You had the Vietnam War going on, civil rights, women's movement, and there was a lot of polarization in the country. And you were either in, one group of people or you were in another. And I was in the other, which was rebellion and outrage and get high as much as I could to try to deal with the angst that I was feeling in the milieu of this political environment of Kent State and, Martin Luther King getting killed and mass, stuff happening in Vietnam. And also the fact that I had chosen a lifestyle where I was somewhat isolated. You know, just growing long hair and walking down the street subjected me to insults and people throwing things. And so, you know, it was really this feeling of like, I don't fit into society. What am I doing on this planet? I'm really pissed off about what's happening. I was very socially conscious and very involved politically. And also there was one other thing about using drugs. I thought that's what you do if you're cool. And my number one goal, besides not getting beaten up because I had long hair, was to be cool. And I thought the more I get high, the cooler I am. So all of that mixed together, and I dove into everything that was available as much as I could with reckless abandon at the age of 18.
Wow. That's just, I want to tell you straight away, I'm not sure what's happening, but the viewer rate has gone sky high over the last 3 minutes. So interesting. This will be really good.
It's Jennifer's smile. Lovely smile.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. So describe the nature of your addiction. I mean, was it alcohol? Was it drugs? Was it, you know?
Yeah, I actually never even knew how to pronounce marijuana before the age of 18 because I was in a small town. When I went to college, initially it was alcohol. The drinking age in New York State in 1966 was 18. So I could go to bars and get wasted. And then soon after there was marijuana and hash. Hash was very, very big. And then I got into hallucinogenics in a big way. A lot of LSD and mescaline and all that stuff. And dozens of experiences, not in therapeutically, okay? It was, because it's used that way sometimes, but not in my case. And then in 1968, the quote, war on drugs started by Nixon. And as you guys know, the war on drugs is a war on people.
Yeah.
It's not a war on drugs. And what happened is Nixon sealed the border with Mexico, or tried to, and it interrupted the flow of marijuana. And here's what you guys have probably noticed. If we're going to get loaded, we're going to get loaded. You know, whatever it takes. If it takes going to the drugstore and buying cough syrup because there's nothing else. And I did that. That was probably my low point, was drinking 5 ounces of Robitussin AC because it was the only thing I could get my hands on. But I was able to get my hands on heroin. And initially it was snorting it. But of course, you know, tolerance changes. And the next thing you know, I was using needles. So my last 2 years of active addiction prior to getting arrested, I was heavy into heroin.
Yeah, that's a good one. So you get arrested, and you get arrested for selling drugs.
Yeah. I was selling. I wasn't a quote dealer, but you know, I would buy a quantity and then sell part of it so that I could use the other part without having to go and rob a liquor store or mug somebody to get the money to buy my dope. So I was selling to people I knew. And I ended up selling to a guy. I could say his name because I remember it, but I won't. And he was a guy I knew, and he had gotten busted on a possession charge. And the DA had said to him, okay, here's how you avoid going to prison. Find us a dealer. And dealer is anybody selling. So he came to me, and initially I didn't sell to him because I didn't know him that well. I thought he was a little sketchy. But he came back to me short time afterwards when I was really hard up for cash. So I sold him 15 bags, a half load of heroin for $55. And that ended up, then they arrested me. It was a Class C felony. I was facing 15 years. And my parents, who already were kind of fed up with me, they had moved to Florida, and they said, look, you got yourself into this, you get yourself out. And what ended up happening is I got a court-appointed attorney, And court-appointed attorneys basically are deal makers. They don't want to go to trial. If they had gone to trial, I would have beaten it because there were no witnesses and no corroborating evidence. It was my word against an admitted user. But they told me that if I pled down, I'd get a year in a minimum security facility and then 4 years of like parole. So I said, okay, because I didn't know what to do. And I walked in and I pled guilty, and then they gave me 7 years and sent me to Attica in upstate New York. So it was kind of like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed on for, but you're screwed. So next thing you know, November of 1970, I'm in Attica, maximum security prison with the worst reputation of state prisons in the country.
Wow. So go ahead.
What was it like in there? I mean, we all think I've been to jail where they stick you in a police station in England and you don't go to the big prison. I've been there for a few nights, but was it everything you thought it would be, as in a freaking nightmare, or was it not that bad?
Well, the first thing you have to learn when you go to a place like that is what to do and what to not do. And there was a guy in county jail who schooled me. When it was clear I was headed there, he said, listen, don't take any gifts from anybody because they'll come back to collect with a couple of their buddies. And these are what are referred to as the asshole bandits. And so the first thing was,
hang on, just go back. What does that mean?
Asshole bandits?
Yes.
These are guys that are going to jump you and rape you. Because I'm a 22-year-old guy who's vulnerable because I don't have street smarts. And, I've been shooting dope. So it's not like I'm a buff guy who can defend myself. And what they do is they set you up and then they rape you. And then you become... the reputation goes around that anybody can have you. And this is the worst nightmare. I don't know if you guys saw Shawshank Redemption.
Yep.
But I love that movie, by the way. But there's a scene in there that's really hard to watch. I never got raped, but I had to put somebody up against a wall and prove that I wasn't a punk to keep from getting raped. But once I got past that, I got along fine with the other prisoners because I didn't do stupid stuff. I wasn't an idiot and did stupid stuff that's going to get you in trouble. The guards, on the other hand, they were a bit of a challenge because they figured out right away that the divide and conquer approach of separating races wasn't going to work. I was a white guy who was respected by the Latinos and the blacks. And I was especially dangerous because I actually had some college experience. So I was an educated, reasonably intelligent guy who crossed racial lines, and I was political. So I got involved with stuff that was happening politically inside the prison, which, when we fast forward into the story about the rebellion, probably saved my life, even though it ended up putting me in solitary, or because it put me in solitary.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about, so I'm a mom of 2 boys that are recovering heroin addicts. And I spent a great deal and a lot of money saving them from a 10-year prison sentence. And, for a lot of people, that's, that goes against the program rules, right? That's codependent. There's all sorts of things. But after 16 rehabs, I had made a decision that I was going to support them because I believed in them in terms of an attorney. So they had an attorney to go to trial, and they did. So while they walked out with some felonies and a lot of misdemeanors, they didn't do the 10-year prison sentence. But what I'm really passionate about and how I work with Rob is through the family system. Because if the families are not on board and are not participating in some form of recovery, they're going to be speaking two different languages. So I say all of that to, I'm really curious about your family. You're in prison. What is your mom and dad thinking at this point?
Well, by the way, my name is misspelled on that bottom part, if that's
oh, it is. Yeah.
So well, my dad, let me put it this way. I have a sister who's 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got arrested, when people asked my father, do you have any children? He said, yeah, I have one. I have a daughter.
Mm.
Wow.
It was shaming for them.
Yeah.
They're old school. To talk about me. And they weren't rich people.
Right.
And they weren't going to take a second mortgage on their house to hire an attorney.
Yeah.
They just kind of backed off. I didn't have a good relationship with my parents.
Mm.
I just didn't. And so fortunately, my sister eventually became aware of the fact that I could probably beat this. Because there were a whole lot of things. They violated my civil rights. There was a whole backstory there. And I ended up getting out in 2 years.
Ooh.
Because my sister went to bat. Eventually, we got an attorney. We got back in and got it reduced to time served. But yeah, my parents just kind of like,
wow,
they disappeared. And you know what? I can't really blame them a whole lot. I never got angry with them about it because I was kind of a screw up,
Probably didn't even know where to start or what to do.
They didn't know what to do.
So you're in the prison, things are not going great, and then comes the uprising. What was that all about? How did that get started?
Well, remember I talked about the fact that in the late 60s, there was this whole socio-political stuff happening. Well, within the prison was predominantly Black and Latino. I'm guessing 75 to 80%. And within this population was this consciousness. They revered people like Malcolm X and Angela Davis and the Black Panthers, because these were people of color that they identified with as standing up for who they were and standing up for the rights of Black people. So there was this happening, this rising consciousness. And the other thing that happened, and this is a very long story, I'll try to condense down briefly, is within the prison, it was segregated in terms of blocks. There were 4 main blocks, A, B, C, and D. And it was a maximum security prison. I was in D block. If there was somebody in A block that was my brother or a friend, I never saw him.
Mm.
It's like a separate prison almost. So I was working in the school, again, because I got some college. They said, oh, let's put this guy in the school as a teacher. And it was kind of like self-study. It was kind of like a correspondence thing where you could do lessons, you send them in, and then the teacher corrects them, send them back, and works towards a GED. And I was teaching math and English and music. And they had 2 classes where they actually put inmates in a classroom. One was a Spanish class, and the other was a sociology class that was set up by the warden because there was a guy doing time who had taught sociology at Skidmore University. And he had been supplementing his teacher's income by selling LSD, got caught. They put him in Attica, and the warden said, oh, I know a way to make it look good, like we're really rehabilitating these people. Let's set up a sociology class, and, we actually have a professor. Well, what happened was that was a place where inmates could actually go into a room and have conversations, ostensibly to discuss sociology. But what it became was a place where all these inmates from different political views and different organizations could get together and say, what can we do? How can we reach out to people on the outside to try to improve these hellish conditions that we're forced to endure? And this is really important because eventually this tension continued to build inside the prison with repression and, like, for example, they found out I had a petition in my cell, and they shook down my cell and they threw me in the hole. And it's called punitive segregation, but everybody called it the hole or the box. So they threw me in there. And then there was actually a petition started to get me out, which the warden ignored, and all this stuff is building. Then there was an incident in the yard where these two inmates were kind of getting at it, and the guards came in and they were going to throw them in the box. And the other inmates said, don't do that or there's going to be big problems. And they said, okay, we won't. Well, that night they pulled them out of their cell, took them to the box. And it just, again, the tension building and building and building. The next morning, a bunch of inmates seized a guard in a hallway, and then they went to the central area that controlled the 4 blocks. It's called Times Square. They pushed against a gate, and there was a faulty weld. The gate broke, and they were in Times Square where they could open up all the cells in the corridors, and half of the prison population flooded into D Yard, seized, I think it was 39 hostages, mostly guards, but other employees. And it began 5 days of a stalemate in negotiation with the state over demands that they presented. Wow. Now, what's important to understand is this would have turned probably into total chaos, except there were already a group of inmates who had been meeting beforehand. And they, as soon as they had control of the prison, they said, okay, what are we going to do? First thing we need to do is protect the hostages from harm. So they formed a security team, and they put all these things in place, and there began these negotiations over 5 days, which eventually ended up in the Governor Rockefeller saying, just send in guns. And I'm going to use a word I never use, and this is a trigger alert, but I'm trying to make a point. Okay, as far as the governor and the warden were concerned, we're going to show what happens to these uppity niggers when they step out of their place. And they murdered 39 people.
So I'm kind of curious, what did the inmates what did they want?
They wanted to be treated like human beings and not like animals.
Yeah.
If you look over the original set of 27 demands, which a couple of things got added to it, it was just things like more than 1 shower a week, decent medical care, food that didn't suck, to stop being, the racial taunts and, the kind of stuff we take for granted. Human rights. There was nobody was asking that they put in a jacuzzi.
Right.
It was just like, stop treating us like animals.
Right.
Recognize that, yes, we're felons. Okay, we committed a crime. But don't dehumanize us.
Yeah.
Don't dehumanize us.
But when all this was going on, where were you?
I was in the box. I was in the box.
Oh, wow.
So they had thrown me in there, and that was an area of the prison that was not taken over by the prisoners. So I was in there, and that probably saved my life because, remember, I was a troublemaker. I was disliked. And when the prison was taken over, they sent in state troopers. There was not a systematic organized plan. They had National Guard, but they sent in state troopers. What do state troopers do? State troopers stop people for speeding. Tickets, right? They investigate accidents. They're not qualified or trained to retake a prison effectively and save hostages' lives. They brought in shotguns, 12-gauge shotguns with 00 buckshot, and just started shooting. And they had sharpshooters up on the roof. There were guards who brought their personal hunting rifles in with scopes, and they singled out people in the yard that were troublemakers from their point of view, and I'd say assassinated him. And I would have been one of them because I was one of the people that they feared, even though I'm just kind of a happy-go-lucky kid who's just didn't like what was happening and was a social activist. But as far as they were concerned, I was very dangerous.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's a crazy story, Jen. I'm like, oh my God. Can you imagine if you was out? Guys, listen.
There's books about this. There's books. There's a book called Blood in the, what's it called? Blood in the Water, that came out a couple of years ago. You're nodding your head, Jennifer. Maybe you've heard of it. It was written by a professor, 13 years of investigation to put it together. Some of the stuff that came out about Attica is incorrect. But there's a documentary that's going to be coming out by a gentleman by the name of Michael Hull, Hull. And I've seen it. And it really talks very effectively about what happened and the truth. And it's very accurate. And this is going to be the 50th anniversary of the rebellion this coming September. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out. But it is crazy. And on top of the fact that they came in and massacred, and they killed 10 of the hostages. I mean, it was just like shooting all over the place. And they had dumped tear gas in there that basically immobilized everybody. But they still came in with guns. After the retaking of the prison, for days, weeks, and months afterwards, they physically abused and tortured inmates. And my trauma was primarily after that, because even though I wasn't out in the yard, I was abused afterwards.
Of course. Wow.
That's the trauma that I took with me after I left, that affected me, and I didn't find recovery until I addressed that trauma.
Always the case. Guys, Eddie Lashure is on the show. We'll be right back after this short break. Hey guys, welcome back. That was recoverycoaching.com. That's myself and Jen. Got some great stuff on there, including a new course starting March the 1st. Check it out. We've got Eddie Lashure on the show. This is Recovery Channel Podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the addiction doctor, along with Jennifer, the lovely my co-host. Jen, over to you for the next question.
I know, it's just so crazy. But so talk to me about how your trauma, like, how did it speak to you?
Yeah.
What were the triggers? Dr. Rob hates that word triggers, but what were the things that came from it?
Well, after I got out, I, for decades, had a lot of problems with crowded spaces, with sounds, very, very hyper vigilant in terms of sounds really bothered me. Excuse me. I tell people now, I said, if we bump into each other in a store or the library, I'll see you first. When I walk into any public place, I scan it. When I go into a room, Margaret, my partner, business and life partner, when we walk into a restaurant, she automatically takes the chair with the back to the door because she knows I want to be able to see the room, see the door. These are classic, typical kinds of things. So when I got out of Attica, I never shot dope again. But my substance that I misused were primarily alcohol and marijuana. And until right before I found recovery, I didn't get into opiates again. And I actually was one of these guys that could sort of drink successfully most of the time. And I know you talk to most alcoholics and they just go, that's, you can't do that. Well, most of the time I would have one beer. And when it came to marijuana, I would go for long periods of time and never use it. I started doing yoga in prison. I continued my yoga practice. I started meditating about 10 years after I got out. I was an athlete. I was a runner. I was eating organic food. I was doing all the stuff so I could be healthy and whole. And I would do really well. Became a father, raised a couple of kids, pretty good parent. But then there would be periods of time where I would lose it and I would go off the tracks. I would binge. I was out of control and I didn't understand it. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on? I'm doing all these really healthy things. And now I'm drinking like a 12-pack of Fat Tire in 90 minutes after I smoked a bowl. And I couldn't understand it. Well, what had happened is something would activate me, something would trigger me, and I would isolate. That was the other thing. See, when I went to treatment, people around me, including my kids, said, "Why are you doing that?" They didn't know I had a problem. I was so good at isolating it and hiding it for the most part. And so I was lying to myself and I was hiding it from others. I was cutting myself off from any kind of support. And I didn't understand that there was trauma involved. I just what's going on here? So fast forward, I got clean at 58, which is 14 years ago. And I had an event that happened where I spun out of control and almost lost my life. That's a whole story. But after that, I said, okay, I need to go to treatment. Actually, a friend of mine, Shelly is her name. She had like 10 years clean time. She said, Eddie, listen, there's a treatment center. It's nearby. Maybe you might want to go there. And I went, yeah. So I totally surrendered and I went. And after the intake, I had my first session with the therapist. And she's asking me all these questions about Attica. Well, how did you feel when this happened? And what kind of effects does it have on you? And all these and I'm kind of like, I don't know. And she had a clipboard. She's taking notes, right? She sets it down. She goes, you don't get it, do you? What she was pointing out was, you don't understand how that experience and how trauma has impacted you and why you would spin out like this and why you've continued active addiction all these decades afterwards. She printed out something called post-incarceration stress syndrome or something. It's a form of PTSD. She says, I want you to read this and we're going to meet again tomorrow. So there were all these different symptoms. Guys, I checked all the boxes. All of them.
That's what people miss out, is the trauma and how bad it affects. Because I have PTSD from my time on the streets and losing my kids. So stresses today can take me back to that place. It's like when my wife Janet, she sees something in the paper or magazine, she goes, "Oh my God. What I hear is somebody screaming for help. Oh my God." And it rattles me. I'm the same, Eddie. I go in a restaurant, my wife automatically sits down with her back towards the door because she knows where I need to sit. I'm checking out the exits. I'm checking out people around me. I must look like a lunatic half the time. But, at the beginning, that's what I did. The drinking and everything, it was part of me taking back my control. The PTSD is me doing something to my body, no matter what it may be, cutting, drinking, eating, to have some sort of control of what's happening around me. And I know that the isolation is is nobody would believe that. You come out of prison and you're still isolated. We call that get out the box. And the reason why we do that is because there was a story years and years ago in the police station that I belonged to as a police officer, and a young girl went missing, 17-year-old girl, and they couldn't find her. And after 2 or 3 days, 4 days, they called the search off. 6 months, 7 months later, they stopped a car, stolen goods in it, went back to the house, searched the house, found a huge box, opened the box, and there was the girl. There was a girl who'd been beaten and raped on a daily basis and just kept alive by enough food. The policewoman came over. She grabbed her hand. She took her out the box. Everybody was crying. They'd found her. While they were deciding what they were going to do, what did she do? She got straight back in the box because that's all she knew. And I tell people today, you have to get out that box. Okay, so we're into this for 36 minutes right now. So let's bang up to the future and see all the good stuff that's happened in your life. What made you turn that corner when you come out and thought, I want to get involved with helping other people?
Well, I was able to, fortunately, I'm one of those people, I didn't have to have several return to uses or relapses. I'm trying to get with the more updated language, return to use. When I got out, I set up a support network, community. I got involved with 12-step programs, and I wasn't back into a bad environment like a lot of people do. But most importantly, I understood what my triggers were, and I worked with those. And one of the ways I worked with those was doing meditation and yoga. So here's something that I say all the time, because I'm a certified alcohol and drug counselor and meditation and yoga teacher. I tell people when I'm in a room with others in early recovery, I say, we have to figure out how to be okay with being uncomfortable. When we don't like the way we feel, in the past, we would say, I know how to fix this, right? In other words, my first sponsor called it getting a bad case of the fuck it's. I'm just going to get high. So I was doing my practice on a regular basis, working with my mind, tuning into my body, noticing when I was uncomfortable, when I was feeling anxiety or heaviness or whatever, be able to go, what's happening? What am I feeling? How can I bring compassion to it? How can I work with it rather than avoiding it, numbing it? This is what we teach, by the way. And so I was doing this work. Now, meanwhile, Margaret she's a trauma-sensitive yoga therapist who, when we started our work 6 years ago, had already been teaching yoga for 15 years. We were sitting around one night, I can remember it like yesterday, and she said, well, Eddie, you found meditation helpful for you. What about other people? And I said, well, sure, it can be very helpful. And she said, well, you've been doing yoga. What about other people? I said, yeah, it's great. And we're not talking necessarily about yoga for fitness. We're talking about slow, gentle, trauma-informed yoga, right? So she said, well, maybe treatment centers would hire us to come in and do meditation and yoga. So we started investigating. We talked to a guy he's a psychotherapist who's been involved in addiction, probably like you, Dr. Rob, a history of working with people, and perhaps you too, Jennifer, obviously you work with people. So he had that history working with people. And we discovered that meditation and yoga are evidence-based practices. And so this person said, well, listen, here's what you do. You get in a program here in North Carolina to become a certified certified substance abuse counselor is what they originally called it. Certified substance abuse. So I'll be your clinical supervisor. We'll get you in. You can become a CSAC. And then approach once you get in the program and you start, then approach treatment centers and say, hey, I'm in the CSAC program, certified substance abuse counselor, and I'm a meditation yoga teacher. And sure enough, they started bringing us in. We created our business, A Mindful Emergence, And we set up a website and do the stuff that you do. We're an LLC, limited liability corporation. We got insurance, we did all the stuff that you do so that you're ethical and legal and professional. And for many years, we had a lot of work going in to treatment centers and aftercare programs for not only substance misuse, but also eating disorder, which is a huge, huge problem. Mm-hmm. So we did this work until last spring. The pandemic hit and we lost all our work. And so we've now doing something different. We're doing it online. But to answer your question, we sat down and realized that what we had, our experience, plus, I'm in long-term recovery. So I got street cred. I sit in front of people and they go, you got X amount of years recovery and you were in Attica and you shot dope and maybe I ought to listen to you. Is there, so, I was able to connect with people and help them.
Yeah, it's such a great story. I love that we are finding different ways to not only heal our trauma, but also to work with other people to step into the possibility of healing a different way. And I think so much of the work that I do, even though it's telehealth, is, Dr. Rob and I have, everything from doctors to, 20 somethings. And really the process of having them get back into their bodies and be able to experience bodies just in general, even to imagine what their heart feels like and the edges and the inside and around and all of that, to really support them to understand the different parts of them that in itself is beautiful, beautiful work. Because what has happened, especially sexual abuse survivors, we disassociate from our bodies. Mm-hmm. Eating disorders is another way we disassociate from our bodies. But when we're shooting up heroin, I remember my sponsor said this, Jen, your sons are using intravenous needles. She says, they must be in so much pain to be doing that because, the hospital get morphine when you're in a lot of pain. Can you imagine the pain that they're in?
Yeah. And
until we can come to terms with that and really acknowledge that, it makes it really difficult to then connect with our bodies. So talk to me about what you guys are doing online and how you guys go about doing the, some work online.
I will. And what you said was so beautiful and spot on. Mm-hmm. And I just want to kind of drill down. When we talk to people, and we did this before and we do it now, is we get people to do what we call sensation speak. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I'd say to somebody, how are you doing? And they'll say, fine. And of course, they just told me nothing, right? Mm-hmm. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, what does fine feel like? Oh, I'm pretty relaxed. Oh, relaxed. Okay. Where do you notice that? Mm-hmm. And of course, they're so dissociated. A lot of them can't connect with their body at all. But some of them, they're like, well, I don't have that tension in my shoulders. Oh, okay. Can we bring your focus into your shoulders right now? And can you describe what that feels like? Oh, it feels soft. It feels open. So getting people to tune into their bodies in a way that's safe, because it was terrifying, right? That's what trauma does. It's like, I don't want to go there. It hurts. So getting them to reconnect with their body. And then what the meditation does is it helps create what is referred to as dual awareness. Mm-hmm. Dual awareness is the ability to notice our thoughts, our stories, our narrative about ourselves and about how life is, with enough space where when that crazy shit is in our head, right, we can go, wow, isn't that interesting? Look at what I'm telling myself, that I'm not a good person. Mm. That's just a thought.
Yeah.
Right? And for some people, it's like they believe the biggest addiction is not alcohol. It's not fentanyl. It's not cocaine. We're addicted to our thinking. We believe everything. So to answer your question, what we did in the spring when everything dried up is we said, okay, we had already been working with some people online, people who didn't live in the Asheville area. We were doing telehealth before people were calling it telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to offer online services. So we do what we call mentoring.
Mm.
Now, even though we're certified alcohol and drug counselors, that's what the North Carolina, they retitled the certification. We're licensed in North Carolina. Okay, you're in Texas. So if somebody from Texas finds us and they say, you know, I've always wanted to start doing some meditation and yoga, we will work with them online, but we call it mentoring because we're only licensed in North Carolina. Now there's different, some people say, yeah, it's still okay. And, you know, but we're going to be careful. And it doesn't matter what we call it, whether we call it counseling or mentoring, we're helping people. So we work with people in early recovery. Margaret happens to be a birth doula, so she works with women wanting to be pregnant or women who have children to support them through the birthing process and motherhood. We work with people with trauma. We also do something called spiritual integration, where when people go through spiritual emergency for one reason or another, they have these experiences and they don't know how to integrate it. So, you know, we work with these different populations and we offer somatic mindfulness meditation. Mm-hmm. We offer trauma-sensitive movement and easy breathing practices. And we do this breathwork practice, which is really amazing. It's this sort of process of accelerated breathing with eyes covered with this evocative music. And what it does is it kind of pushes the monkey mind, the ego mind out of the way and gets people in touch with their own inner wisdom. We offer all these services. We do regular classes that are donation-based. Anybody can do it. You know, you just reach out to us and say, hey, I want to do a meditation class. You can do it. It's donation-based. You don't have any money, that's fine. And so we have if people go to the website, they can see what we do. They can see our background, all our offerings.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we've got the website showing at the bottom, guys. We've absolutely run out of time. Again, every time I get somebody good on, we kind of run out of time. amindfulemergence.com. You can see at the bottom. Go and visit Eddie. Go and see what it's all about. It's an amazing story, amazing after story, after all the crap goes on. It's amazing how we come through this. So for now, Eddie, unfortunately, I've got to have you on again. But for now, Eddie, I've got to say thank you so much. Such an inspiration. What a fantastic story. And just want to thank you for your time and thank you for coming on. The viewers were a bit more than they usually are. Let's put it that way. So good job.
Yeah.
I really would like to just say thank you for your story. Thank you for recovering, and thank you for supporting humans out there in the world that are struggling in their bodies and their mind. But I mostly want to know, what do you want to leave our audience with today?
People find recovery every day, every second, every minute, every day, no matter what you've been through. We do recovery, and there is a way. And the first step is to say, I need help, and to reach out and be open-minded and willing to try something new. Yeah. And we don't have to die anymore from this horrible disease. We can't find recovery.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This was the Recovery Channel podcast by myself, Dr. Rob Kelly, addiction doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. And again, Eddie Lashure, such an amazing guy. We'll see you on Friday, guys. Got another new guest on Friday. Please stay with us. But for now, we want to say thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.